So I think first off, we actually should just take an actual look at everything that got changed and then go from there. So the splatter shots reduce the time it takes for the shot spread, which is gradual distance spread, yada yada, it's just them explaining it. Most shooter type weapons have increased shot if you continuously fire. Yeah. When you stop firing, the spread gradually returns to normal. It's all very basic stuff, but they reduce the amount of time it takes for the spread. So it basically means how long it'll take before the weapon starts to become the least amount of accurate it could possibly be. And I don't think this was something that inherently stopped splatter shots. I think the reason why a lot of splash shots haven't been seeing play is because with how oppressive the dually squelchers are with their range, their damage, and their ability to roll and then have a sort of cheese mechanic with the maintaining the accuracy after a roll, it made it to where there was no point in playing the splatter shot when there's essentially a version of the splatter shot that has more range and has outplay potential. And then it started to be overshadowed over the pro in general as well, back when people were playing the Kensa Pro all the time. So I don't think it was the spread necessarily that stopped the splatter shot from being played, but this is something that will really help a lot of it. I think I'll get more into this. I think the splatter shots themselves are probably going to start to make an appearance again, and people are going to start running this again. And the 52 cal extended the amount of time when firing continuously until a shot spread reaches its max, which again is another way of just saying that it's how long it takes before it reaches the least accurate it'll be, and then reduce the amount of time it takes for the shot spread to return to normal. So how long it'll be until your accuracy just reverts back to normal. I think this is probably one of the biggest changes here. And I don't think this can really be understated how big this is. So prior to this, and people have known that the 52 gal and the 96 gal have pretty bad accuracy. They're not very accurate weapons. But the thing is that the 52 suffers from, I would argue it suffers from this the most because it's supposed to be a sort of front line. So the RNG screwing you out of getting a kill is a bigger issue on the 52. Normally how it worked in the patch prior to this one, it would take only 6 shots before the 52 had the lowest accuracy it would get. And the lowest accuracy it would have is 25%. So, like, here, I'll cut back to this. So, if I were to go and, what am I doing? So, before, it would take 6 shots, and then the accuracy of the weapon would make it to wherever this reticle is, it has a 25% chance of actually hitting the reticle point. And then before that, it would, spread around the reticle. Now, I haven't tested it myself yet, but someone on Supernova has, and they say that it takes 12 shots now for it to reach its lowest accuracy. So it takes 12 shots for it to now become 25% accurate, which is pretty insane. We also need to factor in the fact that main power-up's effect on 52 is also addressing that. The main power-up changes how long it takes before it reaches the lowest accuracy. So if it's already 12 shots now before it gets to the lowest accurate it'll possibly be, and if you use main power-up now, you could, it might even get close to 20 shots before it's the lowest accurate possible. And with something like the 52, which realistically hasn't actually been nerfed in terms of anything between Splatoon 1 and 2, that's a pretty big deal. This weapon has always been a pretty fast kill weapon with 12 frame kill, which back in Splatoon 1, it was tied for the fastest kill with, what was it? It was Carbon Roller, 52 gal, and Luna Direct, all killed in 12 frames. and the 52 still kills in 12 frames. But I think what ultimately made it to where the 52 fell out of favor was that at launch, the 52 doesn't have a splash, or didn't have a splash wall, which the vast majority of 52 gal players in Splatoon 1 were used to playing around a splash wall. And that was a way of sort of an argument for why the RNG wasn't really that big of a deal, because you had a splash wall to fall back on, you had something to defend yourself with. So when Splatoon 2 launched and the 52 gal had no splash wall, then people were not going to play something where there was nothing to fall back on. But I think the 52 has basically retained its power from Splatoon 1. It was just that its kits never were like something people wanted to play. But this change, making it to where now it takes 12 shots from 6 last patch to be the lowest accurate, I think 52 gal might actually be the biggest winner from this patch. I think 52 gal might see more play, but it will also be map dependent, and I think it'll also pretty much only be the Kensa 52. I don't think the other ones are actually going to get played, mostly going back to the whole playing around a wall thing, and then the change to splash wall where you can just keep redeploying it as much as you need. So I think the 52 gal, in my opinion, is probably the biggest winner of this patch, and the play rate of it is probably going to go up, simply because there's no CDS to be the front line anymore. And I'll get more into that as well. So I think 52 gal is probably the biggest winner. And 52 gal and splatter shot play rate might go up as a result of this. Yeah, that's so it yeah, I would agree that the weapon is better than the splatter shot, but the kits make it more situational. I would say that's actually pretty accurate. I would agree with that. The 52, with how fast it can kill and how it has decent painting. I don't think a lot of people don't seem to realize that the 52 is actually not that bad at painting in this game. I think the kits, and basically being that the only viable 52 gal is the Kensa one, which is Splash Wall and Booyah Bomb. It makes it to where it's more situational for it to be a frontline pick over a splatter shot, but I still feel like its play rate is going to go up on certain maps, especially maps that are mostly flat. So I can definitely see its play rate going up, the 52 gal play rate going up. So we'll go back over here. The next thing is the Bamboozler's ink consumption was reduced by, or I guess increased by 20%. And I saw a lot of people saying stuff like, due to this patch, the CDS and the Bamboozler are gone. I don't think this nerf to the Bamboozler actually does anything. And it might seem like the 20%'s a big number, but it really isn't. In the grand scheme of how many shots a Bamboozler will get out, and how often most actual Bamboozler players aren't going to be standing in one spot and utilizing their entire tank. I think I mentioned this in the Supernova chat. I think this would be a pretty, imagine this. Imagine that Nintendo is secretly trying to, galaxy brain this, where this ink consumption change doesn't really do anything. It's not actually going to stop the Bamboozler from seeing play. But what if the galaxy brain move here is that it's not intended to really do anything, but it's intended to take those Bamboozler players that stand their ground and fire throughout their entire tank to use Inksaver main instead, and use Inksaver main over main power up. So by what I'm getting at here is, what if Nintendo is secretly trying to trick people that are the Bamboozler players that have been using all the main power up builds, and trying to make it to where if you want to have all those shots again, Now you need some Inksaver main. And so those people will be like, well, I got to use Inksaver main. But if I use Inksaver main, I have to use less main power up. And using less main power up makes it to where now there's less chance of you one-tapping somebody. I don't think that was the intent. I'm pretty sure the whole point of this is to reduce the overall damage output that a Bamboozer can have from a full tank. But I think it'd be pretty funny if the play was that they did this simply to try and direct builds to be more based around other abilities in a subtle way. Yeah, it wouldn't be an absurd amount of Inksaber main, but for some of the people that don't know, like a lot of the people at like high levels, like the X rank players, we look at stuff like Sendow's calculator and use a bunch of the data we know of to optimize builds, where the casual player does not. And so a casual player looking at this would probably think, oh, maybe that's a main of Inksaver main, or maybe two, because they don't know the numbers. So it's probably trying, I mean, it could, again, I also don't really think that this was Nintendo's plan, but I think it'd be funny to think that it was, and this is intended to try and change those people that don't really know and aren't trying to min-max into doing something else. But again, I have no idea if that's actually the case, but I like to think it was, or it is, because that's actually pretty funny. And then on to the dually squelchers. The increased ink consumption by rolling from 5 to 8% of the ink tank, that is actually pretty sizable, because what that really impacts is the dually squelcher's ability to chase. And with how it's been played as a frontline, it uses its dashes and rolls or whatever. It's been using those to chase down people. It's not really used as a repositioning or backing out. It's more of a chase tool. And doing this makes it to where, just like if you play that way and you chase down people, you're going to run out of ink much quicker by doing this. Yeah, I'm gonna address that. I feel like the dually squelcher is still fine. This, especially like this ink, this change, and even the one below it, the decreased size of hit detection between normal shots and players by 20%. Making it harder to hit. I don't think these kill the weapon. I think what these changes do, ultimately, is change how it's been played. I think that these are changes that are intended not to make it unplayable and unusable, but more of to try and push it out of the frontline position. Because it's obvious that it's not, I mean, with it being a ranged weapon, normally with the way the game's been designed, is range isn't supposed to be frontline. The dually squelchers have been played as frontline for a while because of their damage, their rolls, their ink efficiency, and all this stuff. I could see that this change being intended to divert them from being a frontline now to being a midline. And I think that is how this weapon would have to be played from this point. You would have to use your rolls instead of to engage, but to disengage, which, again, is completely different from how it's been playing. And the decreased size of the hit detection, I guess that also is intended to reduce the amount of impact it could have in fights by making it harder to hit shots. It just feels like this is intended to pull it back from being a frontline, but not make it unusable. But I think it's still a good pick for a midline weapon. But it is, and I tweeted about it, I think frontline CDS is probably non-existent now, because it's a lot easier to be punished because you are just going to run out of ink, and it's a lot harder for you to hit your shots anymore. So I think it's probably not going to be played as a frontline anymore. And then decreased maximum damage dealt by each ink droplet for the Splatbrella from 18 to 16.2. And then the maximum damage as a result has been reduced from 90 to 81. I think this is another thing that ultimately doesn't do a whole lot. It looks like it's a big change because it's 9 points of damage reduced from it. and that's losing 9 points of damage. I think that ultimately doesn't actually really do anything, though, because what the Brella does best is follow up. The Splat Brella does really good at using its 90 damage before to pick off literally any enemy that has taken a shot from literally anything else in the game. It can still do that. It's still fine with this damage value. 81 damage is still enough to be a one-shot follow-up to almost every single thing in the game, barring some absurd low fall-off damage. The 81 damage is still enough to be follow-up for anything. I think the point of this is maybe to bring more value to using something like ink res. So instead of someone taking damage, like say you're playing and you get hit by a burst bomb and you go, okay, I'm going to swim away for a bit, and then you're still moving around doing something, and then a Brella comes by and one taps you. Well, you probably haven't fully recovered from the other damage you've taken. I think this doesn't directly hinder or affect Brellas that play for follow-up in team fights. If you and like a splatter shot are running around ganging up together, this nerf doesn't do anything to that playstyle. I think this is, in my opinion, this might be a bigger impact for people that aren't wearing ink res. That's the only thing I could see this really having any form of impact is if you're wearing ink res, this might be this 81 damage might be a bit more of a nuisance, because then it's going to be less likely for you to follow up on stuff that's people that are already damaged. But if they aren't, or you're already ganging up with a teammate, then this 9 points of damage that get dropped don't really do anything. Yeah, it's still the Brella is still fine. I think its place still hasn't really changed at all. I think it's still a fine weapon. I think now it just makes it to where ink res is more valuable against Brellas because it can't follow up as easily. But I think if a team is playing around ganging up and having a Brella pair with somebody else to be that follow-up, then that playstyle isn't impacted at all here. And then decreased minimum damage dealt by each droplet by 12 to 10.8. Like I said, I don't think the Brella is really hurt from these. I think this is mainly just a way of giving people the ability to use ink res to deal with Brella, but I don't think this really changes how a lot of high-level players will play the Brella, where they play to pair up and to, work together and to get rid of people that are already damaged. I don't think this changes that at all. I don't think this will make any sort of adjustment to that. Brella is still perfectly fine after this, and this ultimately, in my opinion, doesn't really hurt it at all. And then the only special gauge is Strela Brella going from 180 to 200. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but when I see people look at special changes like this and they go, oh, now it's unusable because it's 20 points more to get special, I don't think people realize how easy it is to get special in this game. Like, I can sneeze and get 20 points. The Brella can get around 20 points just by shooting ones. It doesn't really do anything. All it really changes is the time to build from nothing. But if you say you use your bomb rush and then you die, well, it's going to take you a bit longer to get the special from nothing. But if you already have some special meter and you die, then this is relevant. it doesn't really do anything, and I don't think it ever really has done anything. The only time I would say that a special adjustment like this has really impacted something was when when Tenatech went from 200 to 240. That's a pretty sizable jump because 40p is a bit harder to get, but it's still not that difficult. The problem was that Tenatech was played as a frontline inkjet weapon, and it being 240p meant that M-Parry, which I think at the time was still 180p, was another frontline inkjet weapon. So why play Splatter Shot when you could play M-Parry that was the same role, had the same special, but had better mobility? I don't think the special changes really impact a weapon too much. I think it's a matter of comparing weapons that have the same special. I don't think this change will make the Sorel Umbrella inferior in any way, because I don't think there's any other bomb rush weapon that is significantly cheaper than it and still plays the same way. Like, the reason why the M-Parry and Splatter Shot went back and forth was because they both essentially filled the same role. But I don't think any other bomb rush, I think it was a Splat Bomb Rush, I think it is. I don't think this, Splat Bomb Launcher. I don't think this ultimately changes, makes people rethink using the Sorel Umbrella for its bomb rush, because the advantage to having the Brella be the bomb rusher is it can bomb rush and then hold its shield if someone comes after it, and then pick people off from the shield and then just go back to bomb rushing, especially if it has armor. If your umbrella is given armor, then it's just even easier for it to stay alive and get its whole the bomb rush out. I don't think anything else plays like that. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, none of these other things really play with that. Flings a roller. I mean, just people won't play the Flings a roller because the splash wall doesn't make sense. Rapid Blaster, there are better rapids to play than the vanilla for the Splat Bomb Launcher. Slosh Machine Neo, the same thing. There's better machines to play. If you're looking to have a Splat Bomb Launcher, the Sorel Umbrella is still fine. The weapon itself is still really good, and its sub is okay, but it's mostly just the fact that it plays like no other Splat Bomb Launcher weapon, so it's perfectly fine still. But yeah, I think, looking at all this, I think the 52 cal is the biggest winner of this patch, and the CDS and Dually Squelchers by far are the biggest losers. I don't think, I mentioned the Dually Squelchers aren't going to be unusable. I think these changes push it out of being a frontline. That's probably about it. It's a lot harder to play it as a frontline with these changes, but doesn't make it unusable. They're still perfectly playable. Their role just has to be changed if you want to keep playing them. But a lot of the high level players aren't gonna. I don't see high level players transitioning their CDS player from their front line to their mid line. The CDS players are probably the people that are the flex frontline players, the people that are probably going to start playing 52 or Splatter Shot as a result of this update. But yeah, so yeah, and it's fine. It's a good thing. The Dually Squelchers shouldn't have been a frontline, but it was just too good at what it did to where it could be a frontline. So I think these changes were needed, and this is a good way to push it out of that frontline position. And I think that was something that was needed. The Brellas are still fine, the Bamboozlers are still fine, but the biggest winners are the 52 gal. And I mentioned, I think you could expect to see 52 gal and Splatter Shot play rates to go up. We've already been playing and using some Splatter Shot and 52 gal ourselves. If people are watching this and wondering, okay, well, which one should I play? If you're wanting to play 52, use Kensa. Don't play any other ones. They're not really that good. The kits of the other kits in the 52 just don't really make a lot of sense. And this is coming from someone that played 52 a ton at launch in Splatoon 2. The vanilla 52 is not good. Baller is not good anymore. 52 Deco, the only reason you would want to use it is a curling bomb. Yeah, it has the curling bomb. But you wouldn't use it to be your stingray weapon. There are better stingray weapons than the 52 Deco. The Kensa 52 just makes the most sense. Splash wall so the 52 can stay alive and stay in fights. And the Booyah Bomb is still pretty good as long as you aren't panic using it. And then for the splatter shot, it would probably still be the Kensa splatter shot because missiles in team play are still pretty good. Though if you're really good at inkjets, the Tenatech is still fine. Just never use the vanilla splatter shot. Splashdown is still too much of a suicide button, so there's no sense in playing splatter shot. You'd either want to play the Kensa or the Tenatech, and then even that, it's based on if you're good at inkjet. If you aren't good at inkjet, use Kensa splatter shot. If you are good at inkjet, use Tenatech, and then only use Kensa 52. All the bamboozlers are still fine. The dualies, I mean, they're midline now. Splat Brellas are still fine. Even with the special adjustment, the Strela is still fine. Yeah, I think ultimately all this patch really does is change frontline, which is something people wanted. They wanted CDS to be pushed out of frontline, and I think this will do it. I think frontline will change because of this, but whether or not it goes back to like just the Kensa Pro being a frontline again, or if the 52 and splatter shot start to spike in play rates, we'll just have to see. I definitely think that the splatter shots in general are probably going to start being played more. Even if people don't want to play 52, the splatter shot will probably come back. Even though I think in some situations the 52 would probably be better. That the splatter shots kits overall, it has better kits overall, and the Kensa 52 feels more map dependent, and you have to justify its kill potential being better with playing it on maps where its kits are actually good for it, where the splatter shot has always been a play anywhere, usable anywhere sort of deal. But yeah, so I think that'll be it because there really isn't much here. I mentioned at the start that I'm going to put this up on YouTube as well, so this will probably be up either later tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, and then I think I have people that are waiting to play the Splatfest, so if people came just to hear my thoughts on the patch, then yeah, I guess feel free to head on out because this is probably just going to be a Splatfest stream for a bit now.